Carolina's stretch run against the dregs of the ACC? DG, does Carolina have to beat NC State this Wednesday, this Saturday against Virginia, Florida State, which could end up being a real dogfight, and then close out against Miami and Virginia Tech, all with wins to have a shot at being still in that next four or next four after that out in the NCAA tournament bubble?
You know what's crazy, Mike, is if they had a mixed bag against those five opponents that you just outlined, all bottom half of the ACC teams, but then somehow beat Duke, the win over Duke would carry even more weight than maybe one or two losses to those lesser teams. The way the NCAA tournament selection committee does its job, nothing is more important than big wins. Bad losses are bad, but nothing matters as much as a big win. And obviously, beating Duke would be an enormous win. I don't think that's going to happen for the Tar Heels, given the matchup against the Blue Devils and what happened in Durham earlier this year. But I just wanted to circle that. Assuming you lose to the Blue Devils in that regular season finale at the Smith Center, maybe they'll surprise the world, but probably not. Well, then you better show that you're an improving basketball team between now and when you head to Charlotte for the ACC tournament. NC State and Virginia are not good offensive teams this year. Florida State, that trip to Tallahassee will be more dangerous. They always get excited down there when the Tar Heels come to town. That's probably the most difficult of those five upcoming conference games against lesser opponents. Obviously, Miami is at the bottom of the ACC along with the Wolfpack, and those are probably, along with Boston College, the three teams that are going to miss the ACC tournament under the new rules where they just chop the bottom three teams from the standings and don't even invite them to that crown jewel event in ACC history. So I think the Tar Heels are good enough to win all five of those games, but it's easier said than done. I would predict them to win their three home games, but a trip to Virginia Tech, not easy, and a trip to Florida State, very dangerous. It's really, to me, mostly about the Heels continuing to get better offensively. RJ Davis in recent weeks has been a better three-point shooter than he was earlier this year. Ian Jackson at Syracuse was much closer to that version of himself that we were ready to put on one of the all-ACC teams weeks ago before he kind of crashed back to earth and maybe hit some kind of freshman wall or weird chemistry wall, whatever you want to call it. But Seth Trimble has to play better. More like the guy who looked like an all-ACC candidate early this year, less like the guy where you're not sure what you're going to get. And Elliot Cadeau, while one of the best assist men in this league, just has to be the mistakes he makes with the basketball happen to freshman point guards. By the end of your sophomore year, you can't be leading the ACC in turnovers by a mile. I'm not saying it's an easy balance to be one of the most creative passers in all of college basketball, which I think he is. He has the vision for it, the IQ for it, and the ability to execute some of those very high degree of difficulty passes. However, you can't be double digits more turnovers than any other player in the league. There's a lot of other guys that have the ball in their hands a lot. And by the end of his sophomore season, he just has to be a smarter point guard, period. He's not a three-point shooter. Give him credit. He's gone from about 18% to about 30%. That's an upgrade. But he's primarily a floor general, primarily a ball handler, primarily an attack the basket guy, get to the free throw line, etc. You cannot lead the Tar Heels where you want to go if you are guaranteed to have three or four boneheaded turnovers per game. Will not work, and that's part of that backcourt just one element of the complicated backcourt chemistry that the Heels have had an issue with all year long, as well as 2 years ago when they missed the NCAA tournament. That quartet has to be the cornerstones of the Tar Heels making a 5-0 run. I guess it would be 6-0 by that point, heading into the hosting Duke game.
You know, if you go to a Hurricanes game, you might get hit by a puck. That just happens sometimes at hockey games. But Kerry, if you're sitting courtside when North Carolina's playing, you might get just thumped in the head by an Elliot Cadeau pass. It happened over the weekend at Syracuse. I mean, this guy does have some creative visions, but sometimes he can also just throw things that nobody else in the building is seeing. Can sometimes a guy like that be too creative? Does he maybe need to be reined in a little bit if the Tar Heels are going to make a serious run here?
Well, you can't score without the ball. That's the old adage for the coaches used to say, like, hey, if you want to try to score, you're better off closing your eyes and throwing the ball over your head than trying to do anything else other, because that might go in. I always remember Love making that point to early in practice, and the kids always got a kick out of it when you're standing there pointing that out to usually a freshman or a transfer new to your program trying to do too much. Like, hey, let's not turn the ball over. I'd rather you stop, take it, close your eyes, and throw it and actually do it. And sometimes you'd make it, actually get a little chuckle out of the kids. It could go in. I go back to what I think I brought up almost maybe 3 weeks ago. This is just an outsider's point of view. If you're going to play RJ Davis 35, 36, 37, almost 40 minutes a game. And he's in the last, I'm looking at the splits right now, he's never played less than 30 all year, except for that game in LaSalle. He's in the 37, 38-minute range. I really think it would behoove them to put the ball in his hands earlier in the possessions. I'm rooting for RJ. I like him, have some common ground with our people back in New York at Stepanak with him. Seems like a great kid. Obviously has done a lot for Carolina in his time here. Has earned the right to kind of go out on his terms. I'd like to see him play a little bit more point guard, if you will. If Ian Jackson can get his ship righted, and certainly from the Syracuse game, it seems like he's sailing on some smoother waters. If we can continue that and kind of let RJ dictate this a little bit, especially against some lesser opponents where you can maybe get away with that type of experimentation, if you will, I think it may behoove the Tar Heels to kind of give RJ the keys even more now than they thought they needed to at the beginning of the year. Cadeau has just proven that he can't handle the ball properly. I mean, it is what it is. The stats don't lie. Usually at the end, the film and the numbers don't lie. You can maybe overcome some field goal deficiencies or maybe some rebounding, but if you're the one turning the ball over, you're the one turning the ball over, right? If you're the one missing free throws, you're the one missing free throws. Those two things are kind of steadfast stats, and especially ones that point guards get judged by. You want a 2-to-1 assist turnover ratio. Elliot Cadeau is light years away from that right now, almost in the opposite direction. I think at this point, when you're playing against the type of competition that Carolina is getting ready to face, let's give RJ the keys and really let him go out on his own terms right here and see if Hubert and RJ can kind of right the ship together by utilizing the talent that they have in the right spot. Watching them play, and they have these spurts where they'll go through some offensive production that seems pretty efficient. And again, Syracuse is a little bit of an outlier because they're going to be stuck in a 2-3 zone. And fortunately, it worked out for Ian Jackson. He was able to make some threes, having not made a field goal in the last 2 games, made 5 threes, if you will, albeit on the road in the Dome. That's a product of the environment that Syracuse is going to put you in. This is something where you have to really show trust in the guys that got you there and kind of bring along the guys that you need to get there with. And I think this really falls more on RJ than anything else. If they continue to go down this path and beat that dead horse and all of a sudden find themselves 1 or 2 possessions short, and you find these insurmountable turnover levels from Cadeau, you're only putting yourself to blame. You do have a favorable schedule headed into that aforementioned Duke game that could right a lot of things. You look at their bracket projection right now, and they only have 1 quad 1 win, but they've played 11 quad 1 games, right? They're going to obviously get another one back with Duke, so it'll be 12 by the time the season's over. They're still lingering with SMU and Wake Forest and Pittsburgh in their neighborhood. The only way they're going to get out of that neighborhood is to win the games they're supposed to win and hope that in the case of SMU Wake Forest going head to head, they accumulate a few losses. It's going to be fascinating to see if they can get themselves back on track and need to defend home turf. And then anything can happen in Duke games. We do know that. Even though we know how powerful Duke is this year, anything can happen. And it is at home. Obviously, it's a home game. You're always going to bring out the best in Carolina when you play Duke at home. So, crazier things have happened in a year that's kind of, been on track so far. But they can't put too much of the cart in front of the horse here. They got to take care of business in this time coming up against teams that, quite honestly, they need to and should beat.
This is the moment we waited for. Everything you want is right here. We gon' give them what they came for. We gon' take it up from last year. Shoot 'em my shot, boy, I'm long range. Me and the team on the same thing. Stayed down, never switched up. Only thing changed was the game. I'm in the zone now. Nothing can change what we on now. When I pull up, know it's going down. Foot on the gas, ain't no slowing down.